Okay, first I'm going to make brine. I have 2 quarts of water, half a cup of dark soy sauce, and it's important that it's dark soy sauce, not like the usual Japanese kind. I usually get this from one of a couple of Chinese brands. It's different from regular soy sauce, dark soy sauce. And then I have over here half a cup of white sugar, half a cup of brown sugar. I'm not sure if that matters. Sometimes I just use 1 cup of brown. I got a 1/4 cup of salt, kind of good salt that you'd want to eat. I don't usually buy iodized salt for my house anymore. The recipe I got said kosher salt, but I just have like generic sea salt from Mexico in here. And then I put like 3 or 4 tablespoons of wasabi powder. That's my magic ingredient. That does make a big difference for me. That's how I like it. It's usually not like spicy, but you kind of get a feel for it. The wasabi powder is hydrophobic, so it takes a little bit of effort to mix it in. Maybe it's not hydrophobic, it's just really fine powder. So it takes like a little bit of effort to get it blended, so I use a whisk. I won't make you watch, but I'll use a whisk until everything is dissolved, and then I split that between 2 of these, and then I dump in my fish. So my buddy gave me these beautiful top and bottom quarters from like 100, 130 class fish. This one is just thawed. It was just caught like 10 days ago, but he froze it, and so it's already got a little bit of oxidation. And he packed it skin on, fins on, blood meat on. And so usually what I do is I just do bellies, this kind of stuff. You can already see it in the brine. My absolute favorite cuts are the ones that look like this, with that marbling of the fat. This is my one, like, if I cook this is the one I'm gonna keep. Like that's my absolute favorite. A piece like that is heavenly for me. That's how I like it. These turn out sort of tough sometimes because of the connective tissue. They're still delicious to like pick apart and eat one at a time by hand. Some of this that's relatively lean meat, I usually don't smoke, so we're gonna see how that goes today. This is pretty decent. Not a ton of marbling. Not really sure how that'll work. And then I took one of the quarters and I staked it. Usually I don't. I've never tried this before, but a buddy of mine told me to try it because the idea was that it will show the difference between this part and this part and this part. If you've cut a lot of tuna, you know that this is the really nice red stuff that you want to eat raw, and then this stuff has like a little bit more fat because it's closer to the skin. And then if you get into like the actual underside of the fish, like the true belly, that's where the really marbled stuff is. So I'm gonna chunk up this one. I'm gonna take all of these, I'm gonna put them in there. And this has another couple of quarters that are how I usually cut it, with some pieces like this that I consider more experimental, but we'll try it out today. I think the only difference is going to be the oil content. Okay, so some people cut a lot of fish and some people don't. I've removed the inside skin, I've removed oxidation, I've removed the blood meat, the outside skin, the pectoral fin, and the pectoral abductor muscle. And then I've portioned. This has a little bit of fat on it. but that's going to be super good. It's a little bit more than a 1/2 inch thick, so these parts will probably be dried out when this one is done. But that goes into the brine. This part's kind of a chunky brick, but that's got the really good marbling stuff. Like that's my favorite meat to eat right there. It looks like Wagyu. And so there you go. This is another 1/2 inch piece. Pretty beautiful 1/2 inch piece. Another beautiful one. And then as it gets out to more of the outer red stuff, I'm curious to see how this turns out. It all goes into my brine. I've heard people say that you can do this 11 months later when you're getting ready to go on the next tuna trip and you have to clean out the freezer. Sorry, that's my dog. But in my experience, if there's off flavors in the fish that you would notice when you eat it, then there's off flavors that you would notice when you smoke it. So I only had about 1 1/4, maybe 1.5 quarts of brine. And then I put in 2 front quarters and then 2 front quarters of fish. So it doesn't take a ton of brine. I think that the pro game is to heat up your brine and then let it cool down, because that way the sugar dissolves. When you're trying to stir it or whisk it, even if you go super aggressively, you still get like a little bit of sugar that never dissolves. I'm not sure if that's the turbinado sugar or the cane sugar or the brown sugar, but or the salt maybe, but I always get a little bit that is left on the bottom. I don't know. I'm just too lazy to take that much time, so I always do it like this. But you'll see that it doesn't take a ton of fish, and it's still juicy in here. So I could have kept adding fish right to the lid, and it just doesn't take a lot of brine. Most of the volume is displaced by fish, and there's still brine covering all the fish. Someone told me that you're supposed to displace oxygen, so I push saran wrap down, and then I put the lid on just so that I don't make a big mess as I'm sloshing around my kitchen. And then I put that in the fridge for like minimum 6 hours, but at this point today, this will probably be in there for about 14 hours. And tomorrow I'm going to take it out, rinse it. You don't want to leave the brine on the fish. You just quick little run to the sink, pat it dry, and then stack it in the rack. And once it's in the rack, before you smoke it, you want to put it in front of a fan long enough for the meat to get a little sticky. That's called a pellicle. And so when it's got like that sticky layer on the fish, that's when you put it into the smoker. I think I'll show you that tomorrow. Okay, it's the next day. I took all the fish out of the brine this morning. Each piece gets rinsed off and patted dry because you don't need a lot of brine left on the fish. It makes it taste too salty, in my opinion, kind of over-salted. Then I put everything on my smoker rack and I leave it in front of a fan. I have my extractor fan running on low to just try to take away any, increase airflow. My kitchen is cool morning temperature, but it's warm and dry outdoors, so it's going pretty fast. And you want to wait until the fish feels a little sticky. I'm about halfway there. It's been here already for an hour. So maybe in another hour, I will move these things into the smoker. When you lay it out on the rack, you want to optimize airflow wherever you can, so the pieces should not be touching. I have too much fish for this smoker, so I have a rack liner as an additional layer that will hopefully fit under the lid of my smoker. And where I normally have my catch tray, I've snuck in another layer of fish, which we'll have to see how that goes. It's not optimal. You want more airflow than this. I don't know if this is a safe location to put fish, but you know, this amount of spacing is usually how you want it to look. Enough space for the smoke to circulate inside the smoker. I'll show you next when we're in the smoker. Okay, it's been maybe 3 hours or so. I'm not sure how well this shows. The fish is definitely dry. It definitely has some stickiness to it. It's got this like clean, dry sheen. And so far I haven't even smoked it, but this has most of our flavor. So this is going to go into the smoker now. So I use a little Chief. I know that it's upside down. Electric top load. Now that I've used a couple of other things, I think I would stick with this one. Really dependable temperature, not crazy hot, but just enough for making the smoked tuna bellies. And I've also smoked big batches of trout. I've smoked salmon, and my buddies made a bunch of beef jerky with it, and it's pretty excellent. I use the same brand, Alder. I've used a couple of woods. I'm not sure it makes a huge difference, but this just seems to be the flavor that I'm used to. I don't know if it's better. They make fine chips, and then they make like chunks, and I like the chips better. You can see that I have a box over it. Today it's really hot, so it's probably not a big deal. I have a hole cut in the top to let the smoke out. I don't know if it's transferring to the camera, but it's smoking so-so right now. I don't know if you can see that. I'm not noticing it on the video. Anyway, when it's cold, the box does a lot to insulate it and keep it from dumping all of its heat, so that I can try to get a decent smoke on a batch of tuna bellies with 2 trays worth of chips. This is my second tray. I'm going to open it now just to see how it goes. I'm going to pause this, take the box off, and then I'll start again. Box is off. Lid is still offset a little bit because I have a chunk of fish that was keeping the lid from settling. There's a trap door. It holds the tray of chips. This still has some potential left, so I'm going to leave those in there for a while. But I'd like to take a peek. My hunch is that these are pretty much there. When you can see the albumin coming through, this should be done. Yeah, definitely done. So in a minute I'm going to probably take this layer off. I think I'll take that lower layer off. Maybe there's one more to go down below. Then the thickest stuff is at the bottom, so okay. That's pretty much, I had a fly in there, that's gross. That's pretty much it. Once it gets to, I don't know if you're a temperature person. I think it's 135 or 138. I think that the ultimate like done temperature is something like 140 or 145, but I always find that when I take it out, it stays warm a little bit. So kind of like resting meat, I like to pull it off before it's at exactly the target temperature, knowing that it'll probably continue to climb a second while the heat from the outside reaches the inside of the meat. But yeah, still smoking. At first glance, it looks done. I'll open it up again in a few minutes, probably when this smoke starts to drop a little bit. Okay, well, I tried something new this time, and here's the result. I made these thin steaks, and I laid one set on top of the usual racks and one set on the drip tray that catches all the moisture down below. And the one from the drip tray is immediately above the heating element. So these little thin steaks on the bottom were like done, like 140 or so, and it came out like this. They're a teeny smidge dry, but I thought they would be. If you cut a lot of tuna, you know that this was closest to the gut cavity, this was closest to the blood meat, and this was the sort of the top of the quarter. So this is the really lean red stuff. Still, it's not bad at all. Definitely pick up the smoke flavor, a little salt, a little sugar. I don't really notice the wasabi, but kind of feel there's something in there. When I did this, when I checked with the thermometer the temperature of the upper layer of these, they were still relatively cold at about 110, 120. I would probably eat it just like that, but I'm just gonna let the smoke finish, and then I'll turn it off I'll unplug it when it stops making smoke, and then I'll let them all cool down on the rack before I take them off. Most of them did not look like they were done, sort of in the middle of the smoker, but this bottom layer on the metal drip tray definitely looked done. Okay.